In this, Lecture 3 on Chapter 27, I'll be discussing the embellishing augmented sixth chord and the common tone diminished seventh chord. These are both neighbor chords which are typically used to embellish a tonic triad, but could be used to embellish any major or minor triad in a key. I'm going to turn to my handout and we'll start right on page 1. The second half of chapter 27 deals with a couple of different chromatic chords, or several different chromatic chords, that are typical of highly chromatic 19th century music, as well as various types of music in the 20th century. These chords typically feature half-step motion in their resolutions. They're really made out of chromatic half-steps to the chords that they resolve to. The whole point of these dissonant chords is that they have those notes a half step away from the notes of the chord of resolution. And as you resolve these chords, it'll be important that you adhere to these half step connections, even if that results in some non-traditional doubling. Particularly in the first two chords that I'll be talking about, the common tone diminished 7 and the embellishing augmented sixth, in this lecture, we'll find that the chord that we resolve to often has a doubled fifth. Take a look at my example 1. In measure A, we have an example that starts on a 1 chord and it ends on a 1 chord. And you'll notice that the G is doubled here. The chord in the middle has neighbor motion to many of the notes in the 1 chord. There's a D sharp, which is a lower neighbor to the E, and there's both an F sharp and an A as neighbor notes to G. There is a common tone with the 1 chord, and this is why we call it a common tone diminished seventh chord. This note is often, although not always, in the bass as a common tone. Let me play this progression for you. Looking at the middle chord, it is a D sharp, F sharp, A, C diminished seventh chord. A D sharp diminished seventh chord, it looks like it would be 7 diminished 7 or perhaps 7 diminished 4/2 of 3, but it's not going to a 3 chord, so we're not going to call it that. And very importantly, the note that is the common tone with the chord that it embellishes is the 7th of the chord. D sharp, F sharp, A, C. C is the 7th, and the 7th resolves by common tone to the next chord, the C major chord. The next chord in measure B is virtually identical to the common tone diminished 7th. There's just one note that's different. This is what Roig Frankeli calls the embellishing augmented sixth chord. It's a German augmented sixth chord where the notes, instead of leading to 5, lead to a 1 chord, again, generally with a doubled fifth. I'm not quite sure why he doesn't call this a common tone augmented sixth chord. He could also refer to both of these as embellishing chords, an embellishing diminished seventh and an embellishing augmented sixth chord. So I don't really care that you make those distinctions. Just know that both of them feature common tones and half-step motion, and both of them typically function as neighbor chords. Looking at the notes of the embellishing augmented sixth chord, a German augmented sixth chord, you can see that the notes are, in the bass, do. In the tenor, the note re, which is enharmonically equivalent to may, it's the same note as E flat. Okay, so we've got do, we've got may, we have fi, and we have lay. Turn those around in your head. Lay, do, may, fi. Those are the notes of the German augmented sixth chord. But here this chord is resolving to a tonic chord. The fi and the lay are both going to the 5th of the chord. The may, instead of going down to re, is going up to mi. And that's why it's often spelled as a re, and the do is being kept as a common tone. Here's what this progression sounds like. When we're using these chords as neighbor chords to a minor triad, there will be 2 common tones. And you can see this in the examples in C minor. Here, instead of calling the tenor note a D sharp, I'm writing it as an E flat because that's actually in the key of C minor. But the common tone diminished seventh and the embellishing augmented sixth are exactly the same chords that we had in measures A and B. They simply are resolving by common tone this time. Let me play all four of the examples for you again. Let's go back to the board and let's see how we would write these embellishing chords. I'm going to write a regular B flat major chord with kind of normal doubling. And then I'm going to write the last chord, but in the last chord, I'm not going to double the root, I'm going to double the fifth. And now I'm going to figure out what this common tone diminished seventh is. And I know that the seventh of the chord is going to be B flat. So now I'll write this chord going down from the seventh. I'm going to go down in a series of minor thirds. A minor third below B flat is G, a minor third below G is E, and a minor third below E is C sharp. Okay, so let's see how I could put these notes into this example so that they lead in a really smooth way to this B flat major chord. The B flat will go in the bass. The two notes that can resolve easily to F are the E and the G. So I'm going to put one of the notes in the tenor going to F and one of the notes in the soprano. And the remaining note, C sharp, can resolve nicely to D. And that's how we write the common tone diminished seventh chord. Let's move over here to this example that's in G major. Here I'm going to embellish a chord which is not a tonic chord and which is a minor chord. We're going to embellish the sixth chord. And we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to lead to a sixth chord in inversion so that you'll see that sometimes the common tone is not in the bass. So let me go ahead and write the sixth chord. I will write an E minor open position triad. And now I'm going to go to a 6/6 chord, and I'm going to double the fifth of the chord. Importantly, from the point of view of E minor, let's think of E as a temporary tonic because we're embellishing an E minor chord, we're not embellishing a G major chord. The German augmented sixth is lay, do, me, fi. And in E minor, those notes would be C, E, G, A sharp. So the E will be our common tone. The two notes that will lead nicely to B are the C and the A sharp. Let's put the C here, the A sharp here. And the note that's left is the G. Remember, when we go to a minor triad, we have two common tones. And that's how you construct an embellishing augmented sixth chord. Remember that it will be a German augmented sixth chord, but it won't necessarily be the German augmented sixth chord in the key of G major. It might be if it's embellishing a tonic chord, but whatever chord that it's embellishing, you should think of that as the tonic note, and you should calculate the notes of the German augmented sixth from the point of view of that tonic. I'd like to take a quick look at two different voice leading examples that are in chapter 27. One is 27:14 and the other is 27:17. 27.14 shows a couple of different voice leading examples for an embellishing augmented sixth, embellishing a minor tonic triad in C minor. And again, because it's embellishing a minor chord, there will be two common tones. Do and me are both part of the tonic triad, and they're also both part of the German augmented sixth chord. Here, the augmented sixth chord is spelled the way that we would expect it to be spelled, with a lay, a do, a me, and a fi. In the relative major of E flat major, we have these same progressions. Now there's only a single common tone. Only the do is a common tone between tonic and the German augmented sixth. And in this case, because it's a neighbor note to me, The may is spelled as a re. I won't mind if you spell this note instead of as an F sharp, if you spell it as a G flat, which is a may. It might be easier for you to do that because you're used to thinking of the German augmented sixth as lay, do, may, fi. Just remember that if you do write a G flat on the second beat, you need to put in a natural on the third beat. So here's the embellishing augmented sixth chord. There's lay, there's do, there's may, which is spelled as re, and then there's fi. In this case, Roig-Frankeli has not doubled the fifth of the one chord because it might be a little awkward to go to a random 6/4 chord at the end of the measure. Instead, here we have a voice moving by third, lay up to do, instead of having that neighbor note motion in all three voices. Let me play you the four examples of example 27.14. Moving now to example 27.17, we see the same sorts of examples with the common tone diminished seventh chord, and I'm only going to talk about A and B. In the key of E flat major, the common tone diminished seventh chord will have as its seventh the note E flat. Working our way down from E flat by minor thirds, we'll find the notes E flat, C, A natural, and F sharp. And those are the notes here in this common tone diminished seventh. Again, Roig-Frankeli has chosen to have slightly less close voice leading. Instead of moving the C down to a B flat and doubling the fifth of the one chord, he's allowing the C to resolve by third, but he still has neighbor note motion in the soprano and in the tenor. So it's possible to do the voice leading without the doubled fifth. It's just sometimes more convenient to do it that way. Here we have the same chord, which is an F sharp, A, C natural, E flat chord, resolving to a C minor chord with neighbor note motion in one voice, common tone motion in two voices, and although the tenor could go down to G, doubling the fifth of the chord, Roig-Frankeli has it moving back up to the C by less conjunct motion, but still close enough to make the connection. I'll play examples A and B for you. While we're looking at the book, I'm going to go ahead and play example 27.18 for you. It's a very good example of a common tone diminished seventh. The key is E major. The chord that we're embellishing is the one chord in E major. And the chord that we're using to embellish it is the seventh chord that has E as its seventh. So moving down from E by minor thirds, this chord has E, C sharp, A sharp, and yes, F double sharp. That's how we get the notes in this common tone diminished seventh chord. And this is kind of a classic example of using a common tone diminished seventh chord as a neighbor chord to one. Next, I'll look at a couple of examples from my handout. I'm going to look at examples A and B, which I believe are on page 2 of the handout. Example A is from Tchaikovsky's Symphony No. 6. It's the second theme of the first movement of the symphony, and I'll try to play this for you. course, the part that I really want you to pay attention to is right in the first few measures. I'll just play those measures again so that you can hear the common tone diminished seventh as a neighbor chord to 1. Classic common tone diminished seventh chord. In example B, I'm playing, I've written a model progression which uses both the common tone diminished seventh and the embellishing augmented sixth chord, although not in that order. The second chord in measure 1 is the embellishing augmented sixth chord. You can see that from the point of view of F major, it has lay, D flat, do, F, may, which I spelled as may instead of re, and fi, lay, do, may, and fi. So that chord is acting as a neighbor chord connecting a 1 chord to another 1 chord. Then I have this common tone diminished seventh chord, which is G sharp, B, D, F natural, connecting again to a 1 chord. And then I finish off the progression with some more familiar chords. You might want to think for yourself what this chord is: the B natural, D flat, F, A flat. That's a little bit tricky, so think about that. Look again at this chord. Notice what the notes are. It has lay, it has do, it has may, and it has fi in the bass. This chord has the same notes that the second chord has. What would be the best label for this chord? If you said a diminished third chord, you're right. Or you could call it a German diminished third chord. This is resolving in the usual way, with the D flat resolving down to C, which is dominant, and the B natural resolving to C, and it's going to a 5 chord, not a 1 chord. We have a cadential 6/4, which is part of the 5 harmony, and then we go to a 5/7 chord. But the best label for this would be a diminished third chord. That's all on the common tone diminished seventh and the embellishing augmented sixth. I'll be talking in lecture 4 about some altered dominant chords.